Welcome to episode 6 of the Hypnosis Nerd podcast. I'm Luke Chao, and it's April 19th, 2020. Joining me on this call is comedy hypnotist and certified consulting hypnotist Ed Fernandez. Ed, whose stage name is simply Fernandez, performs stage hypnosis in English and Spanish, and he also does hypnotherapy in a one-on-one setting. His website is fernandezhypnotist.com. That's Fernandez hypnotist.com, all is one word. Ed, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Luke. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. My first question for you is that in addition to what I just said, which I got off your website, can you give our listeners the inside scoop about you and your history and your career?
Well, first of all, my father was a professional magician and a stage hypnotist. So I started doing magic with my father when I was like 5 years of age. However, I didn't really pick up an interest in doing an actual presentation until I was about 13, 14 years of age. I did my first stage presentation. I was 14, although I had done the magic prior to that, but I was like 14 doing like simple tests like the eye test, the book and hand clasps, those type of things. Or just getting someone to stand there, close their eyes, put their hands on their sides, and you feel a magnet pulling you toward me. Those are things that I did with my friends back in the day. However, I did start my career in the entertainment industry as a magician and an illusionist throughout much of the decade of the 80s. I was doing an illusion show along with tigers and leopards in the casino market, and also doing the hypnosis show as well. From 87 to 89, I was the Jaragua Hotel in the Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. We were doing a stage show, and with that, the big show, and then I was working in the lounge doing the hypnosis show in Spanish. Now, that take me over to like 1990. It was actually 1990 that I took some courses with the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in Los Angeles. And actually, back then, I actually became what they called then was a certified hypnotherapist, which is, we all know all that titles have been changed now. But it was more like I always kept that in the background because I was doing on the cruise ships, I was doing seminars. And then just in recent years, I decided to do a little bit more work with that.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you.
And also back in that era, I had the pleasure of appearing with a Liberace show in Las Vegas, doing shows like the Merv Griffin show, the Mike Douglas shows, which was very much very memorable things in my life.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, that leads into my next question, which is that because you've been trained and you are experienced in both stage hypnosis and hypnotherapy, or consulting hypnotism is sort of the NGH-approved new term, what do you see as the biggest differences between the use of hypnosis for entertainment as opposed to the use of hypnosis for personal change?
Oh, one thing I just wanted to mention that I forgot about my learning back in around in the early mid-70s, Alan Spraggett, who used to have a show called The Unexplained, if you may have remembered that. And I had the opportunity to do some work with Alan. He actually taught me a lot about hypnosis. And then to augment on that a little bit, in the late 80s, early 90s, I met a gentleman, Steve Steiner from Toronto. And Steve Steiner used to love to go to see stage hypnotists. Back in that area, it was myself and basically Mike Mandel. He would love to go to all the shows. I learned a lot from Steve Steiner as well. Steve Steiner back then was the only non-doctor that was allowed to do hypnotherapy, because back then I believe you had to be a doctor, a medical doctor, to do hypnotherapy in that area.
In Ontario,
so
yes.
your question now, the big difference between hypnotherapy and the stage show, right?
Exactly.
Well, in the stage shows, we all know a stage hypnotist. He will bring volunteers that come up on stage, sit them in some chairs. One thing I like to point out, as a stage hypnotist, we never know what's going to happen. Um, you can be in a theater on a cruise ship with 2,000 people, and you can have 50 people up on stage. Or if you're in a Panama Canal cruise, where the average age is like 85, 90, you maybe have three volunteers, um, which if I've played in the full theater and doing a Panama Canal cruise where I've only had two or three volunteers, and that's all you got to work with. And now from that point, you have to do your pre-test, and then try to get, and hopefully that you're able to get at least some that are going to be good subjects for you. That's a big challenge, and that's the biggest problem with a stage hypnotist. And you just have to, hopefully after that, you got really good willing subjects. And of course, the hypnotherapy, um, we can assist people to quit smoking, to lose weight, all of the above. And we just do that on a one-to-one basis. It's a little bit more relaxed and much less tension, because no matter what happens, you're able to uh, complete the presentation. The biggest concern of any stage hypnotist is, and most of them don't like talking about it, what if you get very little volunteers? What if nobody goes under?
Hmm.
What do you do? Do you jump off the ship? Hope that another ship picks you up? No. So the situation with that is that in a very rare case, that somebody, you got to show that nobody goes under, and so now most hypnotists will say, okay, well, nobody went under. Okay, everybody goes back. Show's over. Thanks for coming. Um, in the rare situations that it has happened, I have just said, you know what, the people that volunteered were not mentally ready to be able to allow themselves to be hypnotized. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send them back, and I'm going to ask for some new volunteers to come up.
Hmm.
And you know what? I send them back, and I say, we're going to just rearrange the chairs a little bit. We're going to take a 2-minute break. They come off, and now any new volunteers come up, and we always get new volunteers, and people the second time around always miraculously are ready to go forward with it, without getting hypnotized. So that the stage hypnosis show is very, very, very challenging, and
Hmm. Let me ask you for now about your more recent work doing hypnotherapy. So, there are many skills that a stage hypnotist has, one of them being selecting the right people and also weeding out people who are not there for the right reasons.
right,
Another skill being how to induce hypnosis and also then knowing what to say during hypnosis
right,
such that what you've said will resonate with the client. And during hypnotherapy, you'll want it to stick
right,
with the client
right,
for weeks or
right,
months or years after
right,
their session or sessions are over.
right.
So, from your point of view, how has your work with one-on-one consulting hypnotism or hypnotherapy been different from your work with groups en masse?
Well, it's a completely different scenario. Um, One thing that's all hypnotherapists or consulting hypnotists would ask, for example, with smoking, for example, if you say to some, do you really want to quit smoking? Do you really want to quit? And if they say, you know what, I want to quit, but I really don't want to, and my doctor told me to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Most likely, I would tell them, or most hypnotists will say, you know what, you're not ready for this. Come back when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
I have had challenges from all several scenarios. People that have had things in their past that they've wanted to alter a little bit. which can be very challenging. I have worked with somebody on a 3-month period for a scenario that happened in a relationship that they couldn't let go. And those are, a little bit more challenging things that you have to be creative a little bit to be able to alter what you have to do to be able to get results with that. Versus,
yeah.
sorry.
When I think about a stage hypnotist doing their work, I imagine that after hypnotizing a volunteer, they tell the volunteer, and now you are a dog. You think like a dog, you feel like a dog, you perceive like a dog. When you open your eyes, you'll be walking around on all fours, barking like a dog. And then instantaneously, the volunteer will then act like a dog. So if you're hypnotizing someone to stop smoking, is it just that simple, such that you hypnotize people through a standard induction and you tell them you are a non-smoker? By the end of the session, you think like a non-smoker, you act like a non-smoker, you feel like a non-smoker.
Right.
Is it that simple, or is it more complicated?
Well, yeah, almost. I mean, the idea is what the smoking is is to get them, to say you are a non-smoker. One thing about with the smoking is much longer, much more. It's very complex and much more in depth, as you well know, than some of doing a stress management session. But going back just for a moment about the dog,
it's a stereotype. I picked it because everyone can recognize it.
Right. But I've never done anything like that. I've never, and I don't know anybody that's ever done that. I mean, I've heard of that, but I don't know personally anyone that's ever made somebody act like a dog. Although some people would like to, I don't know.
Yep.
But that's why one thing. Some of the things I say on stage when I ask for volunteers, I guarantee you, I'm not going to make you bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken unless you really want to.
Well,
but going back, to the scenario with the smoking is once it's the depth of trying to give them the suggestions that and there are various, as you well know too, is different types of inductions that are available, and I'd like to maybe sometimes get a basic induction and sometimes just augment myself with things that I want to add or things that I want to subtract. And
well, I guess the fundamental question is that I picked the dog as an example because it's sort of a stereotype, but it's about identity change. It's about taking on a new or different identity or a new and different worldview, where is it fundamentally the same on stage and one-on-one in a private office?
Well, the as far as the procedure, it's basically going to be the same. I mean, if for hypnotherapy, I'm going to start with a progressive, maybe relaxation possibly, and go into maybe direct suggestions, maybe not. With a stage hypnosis, I'm going to start with basically the same scenario as being a consulting hypnotist. However, my on-stage induction could be 3 to 5 minutes long. So really, only the more highly suggestible volunteers are really going to get hypnotized, where my induction, when I'm working with a client, could be 30 minutes long. I've done, 45 minutes. It depends on that person. I mean, with the smoking ones, I usually work about an hour with it, and that's the only one that I do that's actually the longest. But mostly because the beginning concept is the same. You're trying to get them to do that and feed that information into the subconscious. And then once the conscious mind accepts it, then the rest is history from there. But the basic beginning and the concept is basically the same.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to articulate some questions that I think some listeners have after they've seen stage shows. And it's a rare opportunity where they can pull aside an experienced stage hypnotist to ask questions. So I'm going to just sort of articulate some questions they might have. Because a lot of it kind of looks like the volunteers are just pretending or just complying. It looks kind of fake. So, do you ever use plants? Do you believe your volunteers are faking it? And do you find that it is, I guess, for real? Or is the whole thing bogus? Again, I'm putting words in the mouth of hypothetical
Sure.
listeners. These are not actual concerns that I have. But
Right.
what would you say to the skeptics who might be listening?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that um, I don't believe, and I would never believe in a moment that anyone is going to deliberately go up on stage saying to themselves, "Hey, honey, you know what? There's a hypnotist. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to pretend that I'm hypnotized."
Hmm.
No, that's not what happens. Now, the majority of the people that will volunteer up on that stage are people that genuinely really want to try to be hypnotized.
Hmm.
Um, if there's somebody that goes on that stage with that preconceived idea, I'm going to go up there and pretend, we can spot those guys pretty close. And if I get a guy up on the stage that is acting like a clown or acting silly, the first thing I do, I stop the show, buddy, go back to your seat.
Hmm.
And I get rid of them immediately because the last thing on earth that we would need is for somebody to walk off that stage after that show and say to the people in the audience, "I wasn't hypnotized.
Hmm.
I just went along with it." That
Unfortunately, you
blew.
do sometimes hear that, and it's, I guess, the hypnotist is just too nice to kick someone off the stage, and they just try to play to the nicer feelings that they want to create.
Right,
But
right.
sometimes you unfortunately do hear that, and I mean, if someone hasn't volunteered in good faith to put on an entertaining show for the audience, then really,
Right.
why are they there? Like, is it really just to show up the performer or
Well, no, no, and there are some people that go up on that stage. Another factor too is a person go on stage. "I dare you to do this to me.
hmm.
I dare you." I talk to people after the show that tell me, "You know what? I went on stage because I didn't think I could be hypnotized, and you know what? And I was challenging you.
Hmm.
I was challenging you." And some of the people that afterwards tell me that I was challenging you are the
Hmm.
ones that after that end up being the one of the best subjects on the show.
Hmm.
Are the ones that challenge you, because a lot of times you finish a show and or I'll backtrack a little bit. If I'm doing a presentation on a cruise ship and I follow it up with a seminar, which we call that, Hypnosis Revealed with Fernandez, and we do that. And in that seminar, a lot of the question is, were these people really hypnotized? And I
Hmm.
said, well, they were really hypnotized in comparison to what?
Hmm.
If you have an idea, a preconceived idea in your mind of what hypnosis is from watching a movie, and then what do we see in the movie where the hypnotist is portrayed? "I'm under your power. You will do everything that I say. You will walking around like that."
Hmm.
That's the first thing I clear. That's not hypnosis.
Hmm.
There's Hollywood hypnosis that want us to believe some of these bizarre, ridiculous things, but that's not what the hypnotic state is. So that's the first thing that I have to clarify to the audience is, okay, you tell me, were they really hypnotized? And then I say, in comparison to what? If it's something that you saw, because if so, that's why I do that seminar to explain to people the procedure, and I even explain when I do the induction, I go to pick up people's arm to see how relaxed they are, and I go all the way down with every step that I do. I explain everything like that during my seminar.
Well, if the Hollywood movies don't portray hypnosis accurately, um, how would you define hypnosis? So, if you picked out one of the uh, academic definitions, or if you put in your own words how you see hypnosis, either on stage or in hypnotherapy or both, how would you define it?
Well, basically the beginning premise is the same. Basically, hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness. Um, I always explain, okay, what is an altered state of consciousness? What does that mean? And I always use the example of the highway hypnosis, and where a person is driving their automobile, they're going to on the highway, they're going from point A to point B. They get to their destination, they forgot how they got there, and they said, "Gee, I went by exit 38, 39, 40." And I ask everybody in the audience, how many of you can relate in the audience about this? And almost everyone raises their hand. So in reality, uh, almost everybody that was here in this, if you raise your hand, that means you weren't actually in a hypnotic state and not even be aware that you have been. And most of us enter hypnosis almost every day, not even be aware that we have. So hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness. We put somebody into a very deep state of relaxation and get them to a very deep state of relaxation, give suggestions to the subconscious mind, and then the conscious mind will then react upon that suggestion. So, whether it be with a hypnotherapy or with the stage show, unless we're doing like now, if we're doing like post hypnotic suggestions with somebody with hypnosis, that's it's a little bit more complex, as you well know. But the explanation that I give to people, basically the beginning premise is basically the same for both.
Fantastic, thank you. That ties in with my next question, which is that some academics state that hypnosis is merely a form of role play, and on stage there are social pressures to play along. So if you divide all academic theories as to what hypnosis is, there are state models or definitions, and then there are non-state models. You have articulated a state model of hypnosis where it's a certain state of mind, whereas an academic who believes that it's just role play believes there is no special state of hypnosis and that people are just playing along. Now, my personal opinion is such a academic has not been effectively hypnotized, and that they are looking very specifically perhaps at bad hypnotists whose volunteers or subjects have to play along. So that's my personal opinion about the state versus non-state debate within hypnotherapy. But the question is that some academics believe that everyone on stage is just playing along because of social expectations, not because they're in a unique state of mind. You've heard my point of view. What's yours?
Well, okay. Anyway, in my opinion, that's completely wrong. If you were doing a presentation in a high school show, high school assembly show, 50 chairs up on stage, and the kids kill each other to get up a seat. There's certainly that possibility that the kids are following along because they have such a desire to want to get hypnotized that this could possibly happen. However, when you're doing a show, I've done a number of corporate shows for all my whole life, many corporate shows. I've done shows. I did a company that, and they were all everybody that was up on stage, all scientists, very educated, very intelligent people, and some of them made great subjects, So. Remember the old theory, the more intelligent a person is, the better subject that they make. I certainly believe that at 100%. I mean, as an example of some of the people. So if I had men that were in their 50s and their 60s, and they made great, and these were scientists, going further, going on a cruise ship, the average cruise people are in their 60s, 70s. Some cruises are like the really exotic cruises. People are like in their 80s and 80s, 85. And these people, one thing, they will volunteer. However, I have to be extremely careful. When I do that on the ship like that, I have helpers that assisting people to go up the stairs by taking their hand. guiding them to their seats. One thing with people of that age, never ever will they get up from their chairs, because they're not going to get up. You're not going to get 80-year-olds to get up and start doing river dance.
Yep. It's a
No,
physical risk.
so that's not going to happen. Right. So I have to do things. Then I also have spotters on stage. They are behind the people to make sure nobody falls off their chairs. As a result of that, I have never, ever had any kind of incident, any kind of an accident ever on my show in 35 years. That has never happened, because of the precautions that I actually take. And I see, videos of guys doing things, and I go, oh, man.
Well, I don't have any doubt that you practice stage hypnosis in a risk-aware way. That's one of my later questions, actually, because anyone who says hypnosis is totally safe is talking only about going into hypnosis in a comfortable chair or bed and not moving a muscle. In that context, it's very safe. But once you start to have the client do things, or once you start to suggest things meant to have impact long-term, that's where risks can come in. But I'll get to that question later. And I want to address one point that you made, which is that you've had people who were scientists, who were very accomplished, very intelligent, who were brilliant hypnotic subjects. And we have to say that because there's this myth that someone who is hypnotizable is gullible, and that's not the case. Because intelligence is correlated with openness. People who are more highly intelligent are more willing and likely to entertain new, novel, unfamiliar ideas. It's people who are less intelligent who tend to be more close-minded and who are very firm and set in their ways. But I'm not at all surprised that people who are more intelligent, in your experience, are better volunteers on stage, because overall, people who are smart at one thing tend to be good at other things too, and being a volunteer on stage or taking on new ideas is just another way that their intelligence is expressed. I kind of want to back up the idea that hypnosis on stage or elsewhere is not just role play by bringing up the topic of hypnotic phenomena. So you touched upon this in your introduction, where if you can lock someone's hands together, or if you can get someone to feel like they can't move a muscle, or if you get someone to hallucinate or to forget their name, these are known as hypnotic phenomena, things that happen during hypnosis that tend not to happen outside hypnosis and are useful to use as depth tests, or indeed just indicators that someone is really hypnotized as opposed to just playing along. Can you talk a little bit about hypnotic phenomena that you might use in your stage show, where if you look back and point to some videos that you might have shot or shows you've done, that it's definitive proof that there's something going on other than people just playing along?
Well, one thing I like to mention, and you mentioned about somebody forgetting their name. I'll get back to that in a moment about the hypnotic phenomena. And basically in North America, the stage hypnotists are humorous shows. One of the biggest names in hypnosis was Peter Ravine. Who passed away a number of years ago, and he brilliant entertainer, brilliant show. But he was so careful. He spoke for an hour before he even brought people up on stage. Imagine that. For an hour before he brought people up on stage. That type of show was very, very, and compared to today's standards, it was very, very slow. In Europe, Eastern Europe, parts of and even going into scenarios like in Africa, stage hypnotists are not comedy hypnotists. Stage hypnotists do bizarre things. Hypnotizing someone, okay, I'm going to close your eyes. I'm going to get a needle, put alcohol on this needle, put needles in your arms and your hands. Hello? If we did that today, we would be out of business.
Especially the U.S., where lawyers will just put the clamp down on anything that could cause harm to a volunteer.
Which brings me to mind, I met a gentleman on the Caribbean Princess who told me he was a doctor himself. And in 1958, the American Medical Association accepted hypnosis to be used for therapeutic purposes. Mm-hmm. To convince the board of that, this gentleman told me he was there. He went. It was asked by a hypnotist to go in front of the board. He was hypnotized in front of the board and how it can be used. And he said, just close your eyes. And what he did the whole, he took and put needles in his hands. Mm-hmm. And he said, you will not feel any pain. You're not going to feel any pain. He did all this. Bam, 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 bam. And then after that, it was that demonstration that was done to the AMA board that they agreed to accept hypnosis to be used for therapy. Mm-hmm. And I got the pleasure of meeting this gentleman on a cruise ship. After that, I spoke to him for the remainder of the week over and over and over again. The man has passed away now since then. But it was brilliant to know and meet the person that was actually instrumental on bringing that forward, mm-hmm. which is great.
Well, it's a very dramatic demonstration to put a needle through a person's hand. Right. During some stage shows I've seen, and some videos online I've seen of stage hypnosis, something as simple as causing someone to forget the number 7 can be quite hilarious, because there's that classic routine of having the volunteer count 11 fingers because they have forgotten the number 7. So you'll actually see quizzical looks on the volunteer's face because they... it's not just that they forgot the number 7, they've forgotten that they have forgotten the number 7, so they actually have counted 11 fingers on their two hands.
What's the forget your name, which is a standard presentation. Mm-hmm. One time I did this, and I had a woman, and this was on a cruise ship. I told her she'll forget her name, she'll forget where she, where she was. And then when she opened her eyes, I said, okay, what's your name? And she says, I don't know. Then I snapped my finger. Okay, you remember now. What's your name? Mabel. Okay, you forgot your name now. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't, and she can't remember. Now, then all of a sudden, this woman started to cry. Mm-hmm. Like I see tears, and she's going. It's like, and I said, I see now I'm putting stress on this person because now she's starting to cry. Yeah. And that scenario, when that happens, you got to back off.
Of course.
And that scenario immediately. Okay, we're going to remove that suggestion. The suggestion is over with. Yeah. And then, but in Europe, I've seen guys in Europe take put a person between two boards, for example. Mm-hmm. The rigid body, as you're familiar with. Yeah.
Well, I think
put a block of ice on their stomach and take a sledgehammer.
Yep.
And break this block of ice in their stomach.
I'm pretty sure I saw Mike Mandel do that in the year 2000, because he was a performer during. I don't know whether it was a block of ice or a concrete block or something like that.
Oh, the concrete block's another one. Yeah.
Yes. Well, he performed at my Frosh Week orientation at U of T back in the year 2000. Right. So I've seen him do that here in Toronto. But I'm
not the ice thing is a bit of a trick, though.
Okay. Well, some of it, I mean, like, if you ever read the classic book, I think it's by Ormond McGill, The New Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnotists, there are a number of tricks in the book, like having the chloroform or whatever it is up the the spray bottle that you spritz into the person's face. If they're especially resistant or belligerent, you just chemically knock them out as opposed to hypnotize. That's the kind of thing that cannot be done these days. It's completely unethical and cannot be done, but it's fun. It's fun to read about in a book that was probably first written in the 1950s.
Mind you, that book was written, I believe, in the 50s, very early 50s. But I mean, the basic concepts of everything are applicable today. It just the scenarios change.
Well, for my copy of the book was lent out and never came back. I forgot who I lent it out to, but I seem to remember that there was a chapter on how to hypnotize. I think it was a lobster, a chicken, and a rabbit. So my next question is, have you ever volunteered yourself as a subject during a stage hypnosis show, even if it's way back decades when you were in training or before you were a professional? And if you did, what was your experience like? If you've never volunteered, can you talk about...
I never volunteered for a stage show, but I'll tell you my experience of when I was hypnotized.
Absolutely.
And it was only one time that I've actually been hypnotized, if you can believe that or not. But I was going on a tour. We used to do a Western tour. This was in around 1984, 85. We were leaving the tour. I had a whole variety show. I was doing the hypnosis and some magic. And I had some dancers with me. I had a whole show. I had a 1-ton van, which is, they half-ton, 3/4, 1-ton, which is a heavy, very heavy van, with a 20-foot trailer carrying lights. I carried the whole show. Back then, I was stupid, and I would like to travel at nighttime. I would prefer to leave at night, even in the winter. So I left at night because I figured at nighttime there's less traffic, and it's better to drive. And in the daytime, it's very congested. So. About 10 miles or 15 kilometers south of North Bay, Ontario, the weather was, it was starting to snow. It was only about 0 degrees, so the roads were very slippery. And then just south of North Bay, a southbound vehicle was heading toward me, lost control, went across in my front, jammed in the front of my van. We jackknifed, and then from that point, I had no idea what happened. I ended up in the snowbank. I got out. I was in shock when I saw this car wedged in the front of my van. It was a Sunfire, so it was the width of the car was like half of the width, and there was a young lady that was there. I could see the back of her head. One of my helpers wanted to jump over the snow and go over there. And I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm see if she needs any help." And immediately I just said, I don't think we can help her. Anyway, the girl that's happened passed away. She as she hit the van, she snapped her neck. Anyway, after that, I had to replace my van in North Bay, and I had to get on the road and leave again. The hardest thing I ever had to do in my entire life was get back on the road and go back to complete the tour. And I asked afterwards a friend to come up to help me drive and to make the trip. After that, when I would drive in certain conditions, I would be, if it was nighttime, it was snowing, I would start to panic. I would start to shake. I would say, "I got to get off the road. I can't. I can't continue anymore. I have to get off the road." And I remember going one time. I'm saying to my help, I said, "Look on the map. Where's the next stop? I got to get off. I can't continue." If a car was coming toward me, I saw the lights coming toward me, and the car would like shoot across like that. It was just haunting me. When we completed tour, I came back to Toronto. I was advised there was a psychiatrist who did hypnosis, and he told me a very interesting procedure. that I was unfamiliar with, and perhaps maybe you are familiar with this. He told me to visualize that I was in a theater in the projection booth.
Yep, it's a fast phobia cure
Yeah,
from
and he said,
NLP.
yeah, what'd you call it?
It's the fast phobia cure or the 5-minute phobia cure from NLP.
Okay. Okay, all right. So he told me that you're the projectionist. Put on the projection machine and see the vehicle coming toward you
Mm-hmm.
as it comes over and goes across your vehicle. It says, now visualize that in black and full color. Now put it in reverse, visualize it in black and white in slow
Mm-hmm.
motion backwards. So see the vehicle just backing up, backing up, backing up. Do you see the car getting smaller? And I'm just not if you do. I see it smaller. You see it getting smaller? I
Mm-hmm.
nod my head. He says, nod when you don't see the car anymore. I nod my head. And he said, from now on, you will never, ever see that image again. And that was in 1985.
Hmm.
And I never, ever saw that image again. Mind you, it's never completely been off of my mind. I mean, it's
I can
always,
imagine.
every time I go up to North Bay, I know exactly where we had the accident, just, right around this area, and I relive it every time,
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that, for me, it worked, and I did one session. So, throw out the theory that you needed to do multiple sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I did one, it worked for me, and I've never been hypnotized again. Um, I'm going to start smoking so I can stop smoking with hypnosis. Yeah.
Well, one follow-up question that I have to that one. Thank you for the story, by the way.
Yeah.
It's that you've primarily been on the hypnotist's end, and you've seen people in hypnosis be relaxed. You've seen them be able to alter their perceptions or their awareness
Right.
more readily, more easily than in a normal waking state. And
Mm.
you've also shared the one experience you've had where you yourself altered your perceptions. Could you talk a little bit about how the subjective experience is either the same as or different from what the objectively observable experience appears like from the outside?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again, please?
Sure,
Sorry,
sure.
sir. Could you?
I'm asking you essentially if you could compare and contrast your subjective experience of being hypnotized and your observation of how other people appear when they're being hypnotized, even if it's on stage where you do your work versus a psychiatrist's office where you were hypnotized.
Well, the audience experience or the person's experience rather will vary. Not great, it will vary because you can have a person who is a very highly suggestible person,
Mm-hmm.
and a highly suggestible person, in my opinion, can be hypnotized very, very quickly. Like even in less than a minute, or a highly suggestible person. Then you got that person that may take 10 minutes to get
Mm-hmm.
to do. But with each one is different. There are certain characteristics of someone, their facial expressions, how they act, and also too that can also tell me if a person maybe got hypnotized first and maybe have come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
If they come out of it, which is a possibility that can happen. And if I see that all of a sudden they're a little fidgety, and now all of a sudden they're moving their hands, or all of a sudden they're shaking their foot or something, then they give me an indication. So I will take that person. I would take them and send them back to their seat. People
Mm-hmm.
afterwards said, "Why did you send that person back? Because they were so good up on the stage." But I said, I just noticed that they had come out of it,
Yep.
and I didn't want to leave them there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it speaks to your integrity because some stage hypnotists look for the most entertaining volunteers, not people who are actually hypnotized. You actually care whether or not the volunteers really hypnotized.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, because that to me is we will not survive if we don't have credibility. In other words, if every show that I ever did, as an example, if people would go back and say, "Oh, I don't know, this I wasn't hypnotized," then I would never get rehired again. I would never get rehired. If that's the report that goes back to the client or the cruise director on the ship, and this is what people are thinking, they would never hire you again. So I've survived 35 years going through this business, and I'm not quitting. I'm not stopping. COVID's not making me stop.
Awesome.
It's not going to make me stop. We can work harder now than ever.
Fantastic.
It's not making me quit. I may become a male stripper online, but that's maybe just to help me a little bit. So, no, I won't.
One question I have about the differences between stage hypnosis and hypnotherapy, and I guess you'll be speaking more as a practitioner than from your own personal experience, is why is it that on stage it's almost like you can say one sentence or a few sentences, and instantaneously the volunteer has a whole new worldview where they believe something about their environment or about themselves and then express it through their actions, versus in a private office, you will spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or a full hour doing an induction, and in many cases you'll see the client repeatedly. Why do you think hypnotherapy just takes more time and isn't as simple as you see on stage?
Well, on the stage, I don't know if I mentioned it, the more highly suggestible persons are going to get hypnotized. And that's why sometimes people will go up on stage and they don't go under, and they come back to my seminar. I say, well, why didn't I go under? I tried. I really tried. I was trying to focus with you, and I just didn't quite get there. And I said, probably you just needed more time than others. Now, the person that I could have done a 3-minute induction. The highly suggestible people are the ones that are going to get hypnotized that quickly. And you weren't. You just needed more time. An example, also, I learned a little bit many years ago about emergency hypnosis. And about how people, if there's an accident or something, and this was in the 70s, and I witnessed it right in front of me. I was in Thunder Bay at a fair there. There was a head-on collision, and I was with a friend, and we were right there, with first people on the site, and got to the one car. There were 4 people, and they're all in bad shape, and that one woman says, I got to get out. I got to get out of this car. I said, no, just stay there. Don't move. I can see the lights are coming. They're almost here. Just take it easy. And she said, and my shoulder's hurting, and I got to get out. I said, no, just stay there. I can see them coming. They're going to be here in a minute. She said, where? And I said, where is your shoulder hurting? I said, I put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, now you're going to feel my hand. Just listen to me. You're going to feel the warmth in my hand. I'm just grabbing it. She says, do you feel the warmth of my hand? She says, I feel the warmth. Yeah, I do. I feel it. Okay, just listen to me. That warmth is going to get stronger. It's going to get stronger. In a moment, you're not going to feel any more pain. The pain is going away. And just nod to me when the pain is gone. And then about 30 seconds later, she goes, oh, it's gone. And then I kept talking to her. I mean, now there's no lights coming. Yeah. So I stayed with these people, and this is just something that I had learned about that from actually Alan Spraggett, which is the one I first heard of that, and I knew about that as something that was in my mind, and I happened to be there, and it was something that I did, and I wish I would know more about that. But
still,
for me, it worked.
Well, you did worked. Exactly.
It worked for me, yes.
One difference that I perceive between stage hypnosis and emergency hypnosis, as you just described, versus hypnotherapy is that on
Right.
stage and during emergency hypnosis, your voice is right there in the client's or the subject's or the volunteer's ears
Right.
throughout the whole process. So you could maintain the suggestions that you're making. Whereas for hypnotherapy, you're expected to speak for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. And then
Right.
5 years later, when their old friend offers them a cigarette, they're still expected to say, no, thank you, I'm a non-smoker.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
the expectation of stage hypnosis or emergency hypnosis too is to be able to help people in the moment or get them to accept ideas in the moment, whereas the expectation for hypnotherapy is for the client to accept ideas for life, or at least to accept ideas long term. And I would suggest that that's why it takes more time for ideas to be accepted long term versus in the moment.
Well, it's funny because with the odd time I hear somebody, that, or odd time they say, "Oh, I don't believe in hypnosis. I don't believe that. Nah, I don't believe that." And I said, in that scenario with that woman, this woman may not have believed in hypnosis, as an example. But when I got to that point, and I told her, but the idea I was very forceful. You're gonna feel the warmth in my hand. You're gonna feel the warmth in my hand. You feel the warmth, and then a little while she, yes, I can feel it. And now you're gonna feel the pain go away. The pain just listen to me. The pain is going to go away. It's going to go away. It's leaving now. It's leaving now. You're not gonna feel any more pain. And it's not to me when then all of a sudden she said, I don't feel it. And that was the first time I did that, and fortunately, the last time I did that too.
Yeah,
So,
fortunately.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
many modern day hypnotherapists, I guess if they've read certain books or have had certain teachers, they'll tell you never ever use the word pain when you're working with pain management because it just brings a client's attention to pain. And yet, in the story that you gave, the pain did go away in 30 seconds. And I want to speak to the idea that sometimes I think new practitioners care too much about the words they pick or how they say it, and not enough about the meaning behind the words. Because someone in an emergency situation who's feeling pain has pain at the front of their mind. They see it as pain, they feel it as pain, they perceive it as pain. There's no reason for you to avoid the word pain. And in fact, using the word pain, to use an NLP term, it paces the client's current experience. We will not deny that the client in an emergency situation is feeling pain, and then you then lead by suggesting that it is going away, it's going away, and there's nothing wrong with using that word.
Right.
My next question is one that I said we would come around to, and the question is that I myself have often spoken about the risks of hypnotherapy and the idea that it's not completely safe, so that practitioners might practice in a risk-aware way. If someone is looking at attending a stage show or volunteering for a stage show, whether in Europe or here in North America, what are some risks they should be aware of, or if someone's looking at entering the field, rather than accepting that hypnosis is totally safe, what risks should they be aware of?
Well, you got to realize, or they have to realize that besides the obvious safety issues that I've covered already, and I said I've never had an incident with anything. There's also people that could be mentally unbalanced. You have somebody that's mentally unbalanced and is going to be doing some, participating in that. They can overreact. I know that if a schizophrenia, for example, and certainly I'm no expert on that. However, I do know that with schizophrenia, if a person, a hypnotic subject, could possibly overreact to something, but almost into a violent way. In other words, so if a person, as I say, you're being bitten by mosquitoes, and some people are just going, and this one's going,
Yeah.
Okay, they're really, really. I will bring that person down. I will, and then okay, and I'll settle them down. And then after I finish that segment, I dismiss them to go back. I take them out of it, bring them back, and dismiss them off the stage immediately. Not, gee, I think that person is messed up. I just immediately get rid of immediately.
Well, I think that someone who is psychotic, whether or not they have schizophrenia, already has a hard time distinguishing between reality and imagination. And it's almost like they're in a waking dream. So when you come in to suggest that their waking dream is suddenly now infested with mosquitoes, you might imagine how they'll react as though there were actually mosquitoes attacking them. And they might react because it's so easy for them to accept imaginary scenarios in the first place. Are there any other risks that someone should be aware of when practicing or participating?
Factor of that. Okay, the other factor you have to be aware about is the person that goes on stage that I would call opportunist, that pick a stage hypnotist scenario and then claim that because of what happened to them on stage that their life is destroyed, that's happened to Paul Mckenna a number of years ago, the British hypnotist. And from what I recall, he had a stage subject which is great, and then the guy claimed afterwards that he had schizophrenia because of this happened. It was a huge case, worldwide. Eventually, then they try to discredit him to say that he didn't know what he was doing. And then there was he got a panel of experts that he finally got together, and then in the trial, from what I recall, everybody said, okay, it's possible that this person it's possible he has schizophrenia, but not as a result of being under hypnosis with Paul Mckenna. And he got off of it. Unfortunately, it destroyed his life for many years after that, because even though that was the outcome, he was off scot-free, everything ended right there, but people just remember the negative.
Well,
Especially in England, and he had a TV show. He was a big star in England. But that's now in the past. So that's something to be aware about, to be careful, just keep it always in your mind that there's always a person that maybe, just maybe, is going to try to pull something like that. And if you watch what they're doing and watch how they're acting, and if they act anything that would tip you off on that, you know what? Take them out of it. Get them back off. Get them back to their seat.
Yep.
Before they can get any further to try to do something.
Well, I believe that currently the current medical accepted model for how schizophrenia develops is that first there has to be a genetic predisposition, and then there has to be a stressor or stressors in the person's life. So the claim could be made that if he has a genetic predisposition, that putting himself in a stressful situation like a stage hypnosis show might exacerbate or cause his first psychotic episode. But I understand the claim, which was much stronger than that, which is that Mckenna gave him schizophrenia, which the current medical understanding of schizophrenia would not support.
Well, I'll give you another a really bizarre one that also happened in England. Was a hypnotist did a scenario where he told, where you feel, a lot of guys do it. You feel the pin, you're going to jump out of your seat, but he told the girl that she's going to feel 20,000 volts of electricity when I say this word.
I've heard about that one.
And then she would jump up, and then 25-year-old girl, she went home and somehow overnight passed away in her sleep. Now, the first thing that I have to think is, if somebody says to me, you're going to have 20,000 volts in your seat. In reality, I really don't know what that means. All
Hmm.
that means it's a lot.
Hmm.
I don't know what that really means in perspective. I know it's more than one volt of
Hmm.
electricity, but what does that mean? I don't really know what it means. Does it mean, am I going to die if I get 20,000, or am I going to die if I have 5,000 or one? I don't really
Hmm.
know what that means. So the family was trying to say that um, that it was all because of the hypnotist. Again, another one that got negative publicity, but as a result, it ended up being cleared because there was no validity to it.
Hmm.
To yeah.
Right. Yep. Well, I think it's the same with hypnotherapists, where our insurance rates are extremely low, and probably because my understanding is, at least in Canada, no hypnotherapist has ever been sued by a client. And in the
Right.
US, in a very litigious society like that, the rates of lawsuits are very low for hypnotherapists compared to pretty much every medical profession.
Right. Right. Right.
My next question is, what is the wildest hypnosis story that you can tell?
Wow. You know what? I have many, 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 but probably one as the wildest. I was doing a convention in Alberta, and these were all owners of oil fields. I always thought there was like government owned, but these were all different operators that owned oil fields, and this was like an association they have of their members. It was a meeting. It was a suit and tie affair. There was probably, 150 guys there, all men, and the the situation was with uh, the one guy that was probably what the oldest of the group. I did this. Remember the old gag when you open when you open your we're going to go back to your fifth grade class, which I now do as your boss. But we're going to go back to your fifth grade teacher, and you're the most rotten kid in your class. So every time I turn my back, you make all the ugliest faces you can think of. When I turn around, you stop. I'm sure that you've seen that. So I said, okay, I want to be your fifth grade teacher. I turned my back, and the guy is like, the place is going hysterics. The guy, he's going wild, and then I turn around and he stops, and and I say, hey, I caught you doing that. Quit doing that. And I turn around again. He going to. So I turn around again, and I said, quit that. I'm going to send you to the principal's office if you do that again. The guy stands up, mid 50s man, suit and tie. He says, I'll tell you what I think about you, what I think about the school. I hate the school. I hate you. This is what I think about this. He unzips his pants and he proceeds to urinate on the floor of the stage.
He was very deeply immersed in the
Uh,
experience.
so and I mean, of course, they all knew each other. So this
Yeah.
was it was just, and people are going hysterical with that. And then
Yep.
so what so I'm what can I at that moment I'm trying to get him to quit. I'm kind of to this so so we all know that once you start going, you just can't all of us say, hey, I'm quitting. So we got like a towel, wrapped it around him, and got him to sit down. But I mean, um, that was pretty. Now, mind you, that was at a time before video cameras were just starting to come in. That would have
Hmm.
been like maybe late 70s, something like that. Early the 80s, like 80 to 82, the videos are already in, but around late 70s,
Hmm.
there were no videos at that time.
Yep.
if there had been somebody had a video of that, that would have been pretty.
Well,
But that was crazy. That was absolutely crazy.
it's also back then, I guess because it was all men, there wasn't so much the fear of sexual harassment or sexual harassment
Oh
lawsuits
yes.
pulling out
Oh
the
my
penis
goodness.
on
Oh yeah.
stage.
Yeah. 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 It was.
My last question for you is one that we alluded to earlier, but I'll let you tell sort of more of a complete forecast for your future. The question is, recently, practitioners such as myself have had to temporarily shutter our offices because of COVID-19, while you've been hit with a double whammy because cruise ships, bars, clubs, and so on are closed down because of COVID-19. So what do you have planned next, looking forward into your future?
Well, you know what? It is never. I gotta just mention. I would never dream in my wildest imagination, or you as well, or anybody, that this would happen in our lifetime. We heard about the plague that happened in this year, the plague that happened in that year, and this year, and for us to be right smack in the middle of this, and this is only the beginning. I don't even know what every festival, probably or major fair is going to be canceled through the remainder of the year. Everything as the entertainment industry has come to a complete halt. Cruising, I think, is going to try to make it back. We will never know if they'll ever be able to survive all this. Which means that you're right. We have to make some adjustments. Do have to make some adjustments. I am, I'm still doing some of the sessions. I'm doing them over the phone. I am doing some things over the phone. Um, I, uh, in the last a few years, I've actually gone into doing some acting things in some movies, and I was a magical advisor for a movie called Abracadabra, not Abracadabra, Abracadabra, a Hallmark mystery movie. I was the advisor teaching the actor how to do some magic, and I did a thing called Private Eyes. I don't know if you've ever seen Private Eyes. Uh, um,
I don't
that
watch a lot of television, but
but it's an excellent show. I actually did a part where I portrayed a South American movie director, and I had some lines that were actually in Spanish, which is kind of cool. However, that industry is also um, folded at the moment because you can't have auditions, public auditions. You can't have it with people there. When you're doing something on a movie set, you can't. So all of that is actually collapsed there too. But I just got a call recently that there is somebody doing that some life there a little bit. Somebody is doing auditions now, but they're all online auditions. They're asking you send everybody a script. This is what I want you to do, and you do a self video thing, and that's what they're looking at. But again, you know what? I've made some alterations, but I think it's going to come. But unfortunately, I don't see anything remarkable until there's a vaccination and everybody's comfortable. The U.S. can open up their borders and try to get the economy going in May, but still, until there's a vaccination, people are not going to be comfortable. Although I just seen on TV in Florida, people are in thousands in the droves out there, so they don't seem to be caring about that. But.
well, I've come to the end of my questions. Is there anything that you want to share with our listeners? Any other anecdotes you want to tell, ideas you think everyone should know about stage hypnosis or about hypnosis in general before we wrap up?
Well, you know what? You've covered a lot. Luke. We've covered a lot. I think anybody that listens to maybe have realizes some of the things that I've done in my life. Maybe they could have picked something up there that may be beneficial to them. But I thank you for having me on. I've heard some great things about you, and
Thank you.
yeah, I heard some great things about you, and maybe you can help me with my problems sometime.
just give me a call. You know where I am. Thank you for
All
coming
right.
on board. Again, this is Ed Fernandez from FernandezHypnotist.com. He does stage shows. He does hypnotherapy. During the pandemic, he's doing it over the phone. I'm Luke Chao from the Morpheus Clinic for Hypnosis in Toronto, Canada, where we make hypnosis make sense.